Hey there, I am glad you're here. Tonight I got something important to reveal. Document of monster hunts from the Eli Mercer family archives. But before proceeding, please do subscribe to my channel. They say monsters aren't real, but I learned the truth one cold Christmas night when something came knocking at our door. I still remember that Christmas Eve of 1997, when the streets of our small Michigan town glowed under the soft light of holiday decorations. Our home lay on the outskirts, near the Huron National Forest, where the world felt quieter yet cheerful. Scent of pine and fresh snow lingered in the air. Our neighborhood was a modest one. It was filled with houses that spoke of hard work and simpler times. Wooden fences lined the yards, and mailboxes leaned slightly from years of enduring the harsh winters. People greeted each other with warm smiles and shared cups of hot cocoa on their porches, while children built snowmen under the dim glow of street lamps. Our house stood apart from the rest, with sturdy concrete walls and heavy oak doors that my father, Eli Mercer, insisted on. I never understood why our home needed to be so fortified, but I figured it was because my father was the cautious type. He was often away, working jobs that took him deep into the forest or to distant towns. At the time, I thought he was involved in some kind of logging or hunting business, typical for men in our area. That evening, my mother, Cecily, and I were busy decorating the house. The living room smelled of pine from the Christmas tree we'd cut ourselves, and the warmth of the fireplace made the space feel cozy. We hung ornaments, old ones passed down from my grandparents and new ones I'd made in school. Strings of colorful lights adorned the windows, casting a soft glow that contrasted with the snowy darkness outside. As we placed the final star atop the tree, I couldn't help but ask, "Mom, why isn't Dad home for Christmas?" My mother's smile was gentle, but there was sadness behind her eyes. "He's working on something important, Caleb. He'll be home soon." I accepted her words, though I missed him. Christmas wasn't the same without him sitting by the fire, telling stories of the wilderness and the creatures he'd encountered on his travels. Dad would always tell me stories of his hunts, bears, elks. When he spoke of those hunts, his tone would shift, his eyes darken, and he'd grow quiet. I could almost sense he was making those stories up, or so I thought. Outside, the snow fell in thick, quiet flakes, blanketing the world in white. The streets shimmered with lights strung along fences and rooftops, and I could hear distant laughter from families gathered in celebration. Our nearest neighbors, the O'Connors, lived about half a mile down the road. Their house was always brightly decorated, with reindeer figures on the lawn and strings of lights that blinked in rhythm with holiday tunes. Our home, though quieter, was filled with warmth and tradition. My mother placed candles on the windowsills, a tradition passed down from her own childhood. I helped her hang stockings by the fireplace and set the table with simple but hearty dishes: roast chicken, mashed potatoes, and freshly baked bread. As the night deepened, I couldn't shake the feeling that something felt off. Maybe it was the absence of my father or the eerie stillness that settled over the countryside when the snow fell heavy. But I pushed the thought aside and focused on the joy of the season. My mother and I sat by the fire, sipping hot cocoa and sharing memories of past Christmases. She told me stories of her childhood in Michigan, of ice skating on frozen ponds and caroling with friends. I listened intently, cherishing every word. When the clock struck midnight, I made my wish, as I did every year, for my father to return home safely. My mother kissed my forehead and tucked me into bed, promising that Christmas morning would bring surprises and joy. As I drifted off to sleep, the world outside lay silent, wrapped in snow and shadows. The snow outside glistened under the dim streetlight as I stood by the window, my eyes tracing the faint silhouettes of other kids hopping around on their bicycles. I yearned to be one of them, to laugh, to race through the neighborhood streets. But I couldn't. Mom had strict rules: no playing with the neighborhood kids, no stepping outside after dark. I never understood why. At the time, I thought it was her way of being overly protective, a quirk of maternal paranoia. But in truth, I was different, special in a way that set me apart from the rest. Our family bore a legacy far greater than simple childhood adventures, one that demanded vigilance and sacrifice. I retreated to my room, wrapping myself in blankets, the faint glow of Christmas lights from the street barely reaching my window. My mind was restless, burdened by Dad's absence. He was out there, somewhere, doing his work, while I longed for a simple holiday with him by the fireplace. Sometime past midnight, I woke up to the faint sound of sobbing. Curiosity and concern dragged me from the comfort of my bed and led me to the kitchen. There, beneath the dim, flickering light, sat my mother, her face pale and streaked with tears. A lit cigarette between her fingers, its embers burning faintly as she inhaled. The ashtray in front of her was already full, evidence of her struggle to find solace in the toxic escape. I hesitated at the doorway, unsure whether to speak or turn back. Before I could decide, a sound shattered the fragile stillness. A heavy thud from above, as if something massive had landed on the roof. The walls trembled slightly, and the hanging lights swayed. Mom's eyes snapped to mine. Without a word, she stubbed out the cigarette and rose from her chair. Her expression hardened. A second, louder thump echoed from the opposite side of the house. Then another and another, until the walls reverberated with the sound of multiple things, large, heavy things, pounding against the exterior from all sides. "Come with me," Mom whispered, her voice barely audible over the relentless knocking. She gripped my arm tightly and led me through the narrow hallway to the back of the house. There, behind an old wooden shelf stacked with canned goods and dusty tools, was a hidden panel. Mom slid it aside, revealing a narrow passage that led to the bunker. The room was dim and cramped, its walls reinforced with thick steel. An old, rusted lantern provided a faint, orange glow. Along the far wall, a rack of weapons rested, including Dad's old shotgun. Mom reached for it, loading shells in a quiet manner. "Stay behind me," she instructed as she eased the heavy wooden door shut, securing the iron latch. I obeyed, my heart pounding in my chest as I pressed my back against the cold, metal wall. The sound of heavy footsteps echoed from above, slow and deliberate, like claws scraping against the rooftop shingles. Something massive brushed against the walls. From somewhere near the front door came a growl that made me shiver. A howl. For an instant I thought it should be an animal. Maybe a wolf. Mom raised the shotgun, aiming toward the entrance to the bunker, her fingers steady on the trigger. I could see her knuckles whiten as she gripped the weapon. Despite her fear, she stood ready to protect me. "Whatever happens," she murmured without turning her gaze, "you don't make a sound." I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. The knocking turned into violent pounding, as if the creatures outside were testing the walls, searching for a way in. The noise moved from one side of the house to the other, circling us like predators stalking prey. The wooden beams creaked, and the faint sound of nails being scraped against glass sent chills down my spine. For what felt like an eternity, we remained hidden in the bunker. I could hear Mom's breathing, slow and controlled, and the faint click as she adjusted her grip on the shotgun. Then, as suddenly as it had begun, the noise ceased. Then silence followed, broken only by the distant howl of the wind outside. Mom didn't lower the gun. She stood still, listening, her eyes fixed on the door. The air inside the bunker felt suffocating. My heart pounded against my ribcage, the fear so intense it felt like my body would give in. Suddenly, from somewhere deep within the house, an eerie, bone-chilling howl echoed through the walls. It wasn't like any animal I'd ever heard. It was filled with an unnatural rage. My skin prickled, and I saw Mom's grip tighten around the shotgun. Then we heard it. A faint scratching sound against the wooden floors, almost elegant in its rhythm, like claws gliding over old timber. The creature had breached the house. The noise grew louder, more deliberate. It moved, weaving through the rooms as if it knew the layout better than we did. The walls groaned, and fragile objects trembled on the shelves as it passed. In the dim light of the bunker, I could see Mom's face, her eyes darting toward the door as she tracked its movement. Then, chaos erupted. With terrifying force, the creature smashed through the living room. The sound of shattering glass and splintering would fill the air as it ripped apart the furniture. I imagined the Christmas tree, adorned with lights and ornaments, being torn from its roots and flung across the room. Plates crashed from the kitchen shelves, and the dining table cracked under the pressure of something massive. The scent that seeped into the air was unlike anything I'd ever known, an overwhelming mix of rotting flesh and animal skin, as if the creature carried the stench of the grave with it. Then came the moment that shook me to my core. A sudden crack echoed as the beast tore through one of the walls with madness, ripping through drywall and wooden beams as if they were paper. Dust filled the air. It wasn't searching for food. It was hunting. I could hear it sniffing, drawing in the air as it caught our scent. My breath hitched, and I saw the fear flash in Mom's eyes. "Stay here," Mom whispered, her voice trembling but resolute. I wanted to beg her not to go, but fear paralyzed me. I watched as she slipped out of the bunker, the shotgun raised, her steps slow. The next sound that filled the house was that of the shotgun. The blast filled through the halls, followed by an ear-splitting shriek from the creature. It was a sound of agony and fury. Mom fired again, and again, each shot accompanied by that horrific wail. The creature thrashed and slammed against the walls in blind rage. I cowered in the corner of the bunker, covering my ears as the relentless gunfire and unearthly screams filled the air. For what felt like an eternity, the battle raged on. Each shot echoed through the house, each scream more furious than the last. Then, as suddenly as it had begun, there was silence. I heard something heavy collapse to the ground, followed by Mom's ragged breathing. I wanted to run to her, but fear kept me rooted in place. After what felt like forever, Mom's trembling voice called out, "Caleb, it's over." I emerged from the bunker, my legs weak beneath me. The house was in ruins. The walls were splintered, furniture lay in broken heaps, and shattered glass coated the floor. Near the front door, the creature's massive, mangled body lay in a pool of dark blood. Its form was twisted and unnatural. It looked like a big wolf head, stuck to a man's body. I could say anything. All I saw was my mom covered in blood. Mom stood nearby, her hands shaking as she lowered the shotgun. Blood spattered her face and clothes, and her eyes brimmed with exhaustion and sorrow. I rushed to her, wrapping my arms around her waist. She held me tightly, trembling as tears streamed down her face. Hours later, we found ourselves in the sterile, cold walls of the hospital. The emotional scars that I underwent laid heavily on my chest. Mom sat beside me, her eyes distant as she stared at the linoleum floor. The smell of antiseptic and faint rumbling of medical equipment was all around us. Then the door creaked open and Dad walked in. His face was grim, etched with rage and grief. He knelt beside me, his calloused hand resting on my head. "I'm sorry I wasn't here," he murmured, his voice breaking with guilt. I could see the fury burning in his eyes, the promise of vengeance against the things that had dared to threaten his family. "I'll find the ones that sent it," he swore, "and I'll make them pay." Mom said nothing. She simply reached for his hand. Outside the hospital window, the world seemed to move on, oblivious to the nightmare. But within us, something had shifted. I realized something that night. Our family was bound by a legacy of hunters, protectors against the things that lurked in the shadows. And as much as I longed to be like the other kids, hopping around on their bicycles, I knew that destiny had already chosen a different path for me. And now, here I am in my Ford truck puffing the same brand of cigarettes that Mom used to smoke. Chesterfield, Today it's Christmas and I am successfully done with my 21st kill. With the side seat of my truck draped in blood pouring from the head of the wolf man I just killed. Fucked up its face real bad with my steel bore knuckles. Shot it hollow with my DP-12 double-barrel shotgun, custom-built silver shells. You see, in my line of work, there is no room for mercy. You either hunt or get hunted. I am Eli Mercer, and this is my story. If you loved today's episode, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to my channel. See you another day.